Wake up, wake up. Damon Bruce, Larry Krueger, like and subscribe to Wake Up. It's great to have you here, and I am very happy to announce on Wednesday, July 10th, Larry, we are 6 days away from training camp opening for rookies. This week can't go by fast enough. Good morning, man. How you doing?
Good morning. Yep. Training camp will be here soon, and none too fast. And then, in fact, this Kev went on a long trip to Europe, and he said, hey, I said, how long are you going for? He's like, I'm going for about a month. I'm like, wow. So he's going for a total of 28 days, but he's already been gone for 18 days. So he'll be back in 10 days from now. And we're promising to have just a monster football season with all kinds of content released through every portal, every social media portal known to man. So buckle up your chin straps, Niner fans, because Niner content is coming your way in a huge way, starting with training camp. This year, Kev going full-time on the Krug Show. No more, hey, I've got to study about this or that at Cal Poly. Dad, I got to go to a fraternity party. Dad, I got to date with my girlfriend. Now he is all in on 49er content creation as of
like
camp.
a shaving cream pie you can't avoid. It's going to hit you in the face. 49er content. It's coming. We don't have that much actual 49ers content changed between the last time we talked, Larry, and what we're going to talk about here today. As always, Brandon Ayuk is the first order of business, and some interesting things being said by Matt Mayoko on a podcast lately, where Mayoko basically sent up a signal flare that an extension for Ayuk is about a 50-50 proposition. And at the end of that proposition, it doesn't sound like, he's getting traded. It sounds like the 49ers are ready to buckle up and play hardball with their wide receiver, according to what Brandon Ayuk or Matt Mayoko said about Brandon Ayuk. What do you got?
Yeah, Mayoko says that an Ayuk Niner contract is, or I should say contract extension, quote, is far from guaranteed. So, if extending Ayuk, and what Mayoko's point is that the Niners are holding firm on this. Why? Because they're staring at a free agent class next year of their starting left guard, Aaron Banks, their two starting corners, Deommodore Lenoir and Mooney Ward, and, one of their best defenders in Dre Greenlaw. All four of those guys probably are going to walk away if they go and do this extension with Ayuk. So it's easy, it's easy to be like, sign Ayuk. But that's easy to kind of say, sign everybody. What you really are saying, it sounds like, is sign Ayuk and don't sign Banks, Lenoir, Ward, or Greenlaw. And if you frame it like that, then all of a sudden now you got to pause, right? Now you got to think about it. Well, wait a second. How valuable are those four guys? How valuable is Ayuk? So on and so forth. And then now it makes you pause a little bit. But yeah, Ayuk, he said that he would Mayoko put the Ayuk contract extension at 50-50, saying that it's 50% chance it gets done, 50% chance it doesn't. He says, and then he kind of went on and added his wrinkle at the end, Damon, saying that he thinks that the Niners will have Ayuk play this year on the 5th-year option. If they can't come to some kind of long-term agreement in the middle of the year, they will franchise tag him at the end of the year and most likely attempt to trade him next March after they franchise tag him.
But
so kind of the way
franchise tagging him is really punitive in terms of the amount of money in cap space of next year. I mean, to franchise tag a wide receiver now, that's the average salary, the top 5 highest paid wide receivers. So you're looking at, a $30 million conversation right there.
Right. I mean, it's really similar.
And trade him.
I mean, it's very similar to if you pay him what he wants, you're basically paying him right around what he would be tagged. But if you tag him, you own his rights, and then his contract's set. Right. And then, we'll see what he's, I mean, the only thing I'll say about this whole report from Mayoko is this kind of flies in the face of the people that are arguing that there is no trade market for Ayuk. Nobody wants to trade for him. Well, if you're going to franchise tag him and attempt to trade him at that point, I think that the assumption is that you wouldn't even go down that road unless you already knew there was a market.
Who the hell is saying that there's no trade market for Brandon Ayuk? That's absurd.
Dieter was saying it last night on the stream. He said that there's no, there's not a burgeoning market because not only would you have to satisfy the 49ers in a trade, but then you got to turn around and satisfy Ayuk with a contract. I kind of disagree from the standpoint of we're talking about a top 5 or 6 NFL wide receiver in the prime of his career. And yes, are there options in the draft? Yeah. But we all know the way the draft works with wide receivers. Almost every wide receiver in our lifetime, not named Randy Moss, came into the league and had a 1 or 2 year ramp up where they kind of struggled. So if you're Trent Baalke and you think, well, wait a second, if we draft, and they drafted the LSU receiver, Brian Thomas, what if it takes him 2 years to get it going? Is Trent going to even be there by the time that Brian Thomas is playing his best football? As opposed to if you're on the hot seat or you need to win now, Ayuk's ready to roll.
He's a ready to produce player. Of course, he's going to have a trade market. Now, will it be the robust return that, that Niner fans dream of? Maybe not. I mean, maybe part of the deal of trading for Brandon Ayuk is we're not going to give you the cat's meow and everything that you want for this because it's going to be incredibly expensive to sign this guy. Like, we're taking on a big financial burden over here. So we need to protect some picks or something along the way because
that doesn't jive with Tyreek. Tyreek, they paid a ton for. Miami paid a ton for Tyreek and then had to pay him a ton.
Well, so, I mean, Tyreek is, I think, pound for pound in the top 10 players in the league. Brandon Ayuk's not quite that. Brandon Ayuk's really good. He's not even.
They're in the same neighborhood. As far as I'm concerned, they're in the same neighborhood. They're both elite receivers. I agree. Tyreek's better.
In the same neighborhood, but not from a production standpoint, not from a market standpoint. Tyreek Hill sells tickets. Brandon Ayuk has never sold a ticket to a football game ever.
Wow. How do you even gauge that? The Niners are sold out. There's tons of 11 jerseys all over the place. All I'm saying is Ayuk's a top tier receiver. He's not like, we're not talking about who's a top 25 receiver. I mean, he's not Calvin Ridley. He may not be Tyreek. He may not be Devontae. He may not be Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase, but he's like right there.
He's
underneath
really
those
good.
Guys.
I mean, look, I'm not here to tell you that
really
I don't like Brandon.
And there is a market for trade. I don't know if there's a market that includes day one pick, but there's absolutely, I would say, no less than a dozen teams around the NFL that would trade for Brandon Ayuk tomorrow if the price was reasonable.
Well,
that's
to me,
how good he is.
The team that would be trading for Brandon Ayuk, like, I really don't see it coming from the Patriots, the Commanders, teams just trying to become anything other than the last place team in their own division. Like, Brandon Ayuk is a final piece, not a starting piece, right?
But the Commanders are different. I've said this for, this entire offseason. Their mindset is not the mindset of a typical first-year regime. They're not, because that's why Bob Myers sprinted over there, is because they know that they have the worst stadium financial situation in football. You can't really compete for free agency without the revenue that is attached to the stadium. So you got to get that done. They're an awesome brand. I mean, they're an iconic brand. The Commanders are the Redskins before that, one of the most popular teams.
Not anymore.
No, they're not now, but the thing is, they're kind of like, they're a dormant, iconic brand with a massive audience. I mean, anybody who's been in the Beltway at all, I mean, the Redskins are like 5 times more popular than the Nationals, the Orioles, and the Wizards / Bullets.
Wizards, the Capitals, the Baltimore Ravens.
They're all, I mean, Ravens are popular too, but the Redskins and the Commanders have a deep pull in that part of the country. And they know that they need to do 3 things. Get their football situation cleaned up as fast as possible. So they brought in a head coach, new GM. He signed 20 veteran free agents. That's like the record for veteran free agents in one off season. So they're not like going, hey, let's go through the draft and we'll build through the draft and, 1 piece a year, 2 piece. No, they're like, hey, we need to win right away. We need to be relevant right away.
It's a great way to get stuck in the mud. How many times did Daniel Snyder win the offseason Super Bowl with the big signing that was going to change everything? And it might not have been 20 free agents, but it was one big free agent every year. And then nothing.
Well, they signed guys who are done. I mean, the thing of free agency is you can't sign these old big names. And that's exactly what they did. Bruce Smith, Deion Sanders. I mean, they went out and got the biggest name guys and paid them the biggest cash.
Teams that
but they were all old.
Teams that try to take the quick route to team building go backwards more often than they go forwards. Like,
I like what they've done, though. I mean, like, if you look at what they've done, look what they've done. I mean, I thought they had a really, really strong offseason. I mean, you know, they went out and got guys at almost every position. I mean, Nick Allegretti slots in at left guard. They took the center away from Dallas, Tyler Biadasz. He's good. They added Zach Ertz. They added Austin Eckler. On defense, they added, you know, Dorrance Armstrong, Cleveland Farrell, Dante Fowler, Frankie Louvu, Bobby Wagner, Jeremy Chin. And then they went out and had a decent draft. I mean, Johnny Newton, Mikey Sainristil, Jaden Daniels, Ben Sinnott. I mean, they got some Luke McCaffrey. They got some good players.
They got some good players, but, you know, the best thing that the Commanders have going for them is they're in football's most overrated division, right?
Well, they're coming, man. They're coming. I mean, I think Dallas is going to backslide a little bit. I think Philly's still the class of the division, but the Giants are kind of stammering around. I'd say the Commanders are coming, but that doesn't change the point. The point was that they want to turn things around super fast so they can gain relevancy, put butts in the seats, get momentum for the stadium, get that initiative on the ballot, and get that stadium built as fast as possible so they can compete. So that's their game plan. So in a lot of ways, you would say Brandon Ayuk doesn't fit on a first-year regime, but he actually absolutely does, because they've got a young quarterback that they're trying to get up to speed like today. And this is that guy's best buddy.
Well, and Adam Peters, right? I mean, the fact that Adam Peters is sitting there, and Adam Peters, maybe more than any other non-49er front office entity, knows who Brandon Ayuk is very, very well, right?
So, no doubt. And also, this Commanders team, they have receivers. I mean, it's not like they're the Chargers. The Chargers are going to have a hard time just fielding receivers because they're so thin. I think the Commanders have Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, Luke McCaffrey. I mean, they've got, Jamison Crowder. They've got a full receiving core that they don't necessarily need Ayuk, but they want Ayuk, I'm sure, to satisfy Daniels and to get that momentum going towards being a playoff team and turning the whole franchise around.
They're already sending him practice film. We know that. So,
well, and that little move right there, I mean, probably gets Daniels in trouble, because obviously it came from Daniels. I'm sure it's probably not according to the rules to send your team guys and other teams pictures of your mini camp or OTAs, but nonetheless, that's kind of a side issue. The other issue is, how bad does Brandon Ayuk want to play for the Commanders? And the bottom line for me is, you know what? He's not Jerry Rice. And if you ask me the question, would I rather pay Ayuk or Banks and Ward and Lenore and my free agents going forward? I don't know. Do I want to have to replace both corners, a starting linebacker and a starting offensive lineman, all because I decided to go with a receiver and I'm loaded at receiver? I guess I'd have to know from Shanahan's perspective and the coaching perspective, what does Jacob Cowing look like to you guys? What does Ricky Pearsall look like to you guys? How much can they contribute this year? Could you possibly move Ayuk and still compete for a Super Bowl? Or, and if not, that's kind of the end of the discussion right there.
Hey, maybe we're asking the wrong question. What do you think of Juwan Jennings? What do you think of Trent Taylor? Are they difference makers? Are they closing the gap on this decision to trade Brandon Ayuk even more than the rookies who are on your team right now? So,
and what would help the Niners win the Super Bowl more? Brandon Ayuk on a loaded wide receiver core, because that's what it would be, or Ayuk to the Commanders, and maybe you got, I don't know, I was throwing out Jonathan Allen, Luke McCaffrey, and a pick. Here we go. We got Leon, who's basically heard my take, kind of likes it. I think he says if I could get Jonathan Allen and Luke McCaffrey, I'd trade Ayuk.
I would say this though, in the history,
I might need a pick.
Football,
I might need more of a pick there, but either way, that's pretty good.
In the history of football, I'm going to need an example of an NFL team drafting, signing, and then trading a player before he's even reported to training camp. You know what I mean? Like, I just
think it's against the rules.
Is it against the rules? I've never seen
it. Could be. I mean, it could be against the rules. I don't know.
I don't know. By the way, Steve-O Knows says, morning, Larry and Damon. Wake up with you guys is a great birthday present. Appreciate you. So all I can tell you is Steve-O Knows. Happy birthday.
Where is it? Wait, he's got a bunch in here. Let me see. That must be up. Here it is.
There you go. Happy birthday. Leon Sandcastle, thank you very much for the comment.
We got this from Steve-O. How long was Daniels in college? BA is going on 5th year. Well, he played a couple years at ASU, and then he transferred to LSU. So I think he had 3
Steve-O Knows. He's up a little bit more. You're close. Keep going up. Keep going up. And you'll see it. You got fire emojis in the cheat.
Morning, Larry and Damon. Wake up with you guys is a great birthday present. Appreciate you guys.
Well, happy birthday. Steve-O. You know, I was thinking about this. Yeah.
How old are you, Steve-O?
I always have trouble with, remembering the dates of championship years and all this stuff. And it would be really convenient. This is why the 49ers got to win the Super Bowl this year. Because I'll never forget that the 49ers won the Super Bowl when I was 49 years old. I'm 49, 49. It lines up, Larry. I don't think you've considered this in any of the content that you've produced.
You are 49? Or are you saying last year or this year?
I'm 49. Now,
you are 49.
That means it's time to go.
Will you still be 49 on February, whatever, when they play the Super Bowl?
Yes, I will. I don't hit big 5-0 until March. So
can Damon get a Super Bowl for the Niners in his 40s?
Is anyone
even will he have to wait till he's 50?
Anyone considering this? I mean, I don't think anyone's coming at this from this angle.
No.
So there you go.
It's fresh. It's fresh material. Look for other content creators to jump aboard.
It's like when Andrea would call into KNBR telling you that the house of Venus was rising in the 11th plane of tonight's starting pitcher, and you're like, well,
I used to joke that Andrea was that plant that grows in the desert when everything else around it dies, and there there is a plant in the desert that literally will sprout up after everything around it dies. And I kind of look at Andrea as that version of sports talk callers. Andrea appears when all other callers die.
Look, all I can tell you is that she's a hustler. She stays relevant. She puts in the man hours it takes to stay relevant.
You're an Aries, which means that you're kind and you're also responsible and you like earth tones and you feel like the Giants don't have enough offense. Is that true? Yes, that is true, Andrew. I knew it.
As I plot the charts, I can't help but notice there's a problem in this bullpen. Anyway, look, so there you go. I don't want to keep on going around in circles and Brandon Ayuk. There's nothing left to say. The only thing we need on this is the conclusion. X marks the spot. We know what that X is. We know how different that X can change. It's just time to, I think, reach event horizon on Mr. Ayuk and his situation. What is interesting, though, is that Matt Mayoko, very plugged-in guy, is saying that the 49ers are ready to just look at this whole thing and go, we're playing hardball, and we don't care if you're the poutiest, most tick-tockinest bitch in the locker room. We're bringing you back for 14 and a hook. And after that, we might franchise tag you. So,
hey, you know what's the good news on all this, Damon? Is that Chase Sr. and I had a conversation about this the other day. He put together a reel and put it out there. I'm sure you're very familiar with reels. You put them together yourself. Ayuk liked our reel, so maybe we'll be in the documentary. I might be in the documentary with, because Ayuk liked the Chase Sr. Larry Krueger reel. And I don't even know what we said about him, but he liked it. So there you go.
I'm excited for you both. I can't wait to see what that does for your career.
We could be in the doc, man. We could be in the doc.
Next thing you know,
what was the Bulls doc called?
The Last Dance.
Yes. Here we go. The First Dance.
Another dance.
Another dance. Stop fucking dancing.
These guys can't dance. Look, it's
only one of us can dance between me and Debo at the end of the year. The Niners will have to decide. Michael says if you
Spielberg and Hollywood come after you and Chase Sr. after seeing you in this documentary, which is sure to be nominated for several Academy Awards.
Were you in the Brandon Ayuk doc? Yes, I was. Thank you. It was a bit role, but it's what can I say? Michael Alanis says if you were to swap receivers for Ayuk, it'd have to be Jahan Dotson, not Luke McCaffrey. That's a huge fall off. The Super Bowl window was last year and our best chance to win it. I disagree with the Super Bowl window was last year. I mean, why? Purdy's better this year than last year. I guarantee you after a full off season. Shanahan's in the prime of his career. Nobody walked away. That's who's not who was on last year's team that's not on this year's team that makes this year impossible. Right. Who's the best player they lost? Eric Armstead.
Eric Armstead
with chronic knee and foot issues is also.
Let's not say anything negative about him. That's a loss. He was a good player.
It's a loss, but I'm just saying that's not one of your top 10 players. I don't think. So something Lily Bad here says, or Lil Baby Dad.
Little baby
dad says nobody wants Luke. Yeah. Invader 49 says Luke is not that good. I think he's pretty good, actually. I don't. He's not as good as Ayuk.
Well, we don't know what he is. That's the point.
Yeah, he's not. I think we know he's not as good as Ayuk. Right. I mean, Ayuk was a first-round draft choice. This guy was not. And I've watched, some McCaffrey film, and I like him. Don't get me wrong. I like him. I'd like to have him, but he doesn't have massive separation. All I'm saying is, if you're the 49ers, you can have one of two. There's three possible results, right? The results are he sits there on the 5th-year option, pissed off all year, but he's on the team. That's one. The second one is he holds out and doesn't play until the last possible moment that he has to accrue the year and basically sabotages the year. And the third is that he's traded. And the fourth, I guess, is that he's traded for assets that are picks, future assets, and assets that are players, current assets. So you have 4 potential options. I don't think trading him for future assets is a workable situation. So take that one off the board, because you can't look Kittle and Trent and all those veterans or coaches in the eye and say, hey, in the middle of our Super Bowl window, we're not getting anything back for a star receiver. No, that's a non-starter. So that one's off the board. I don't think just saying, hey, play on your 5th-year option, you sit there and, take it. I just don't believe they're going to do that. I don't believe that's the good thing to have a guy that vital to your team, that unhappy in the corner of your room. So that's another option I think is off the table. So to me, the 2 options really come down to you get this deal done or you trade this guy for assets that you can use this year. That's, to me, the only way this goes down. And it's probably unlikely that they trade him, but if they did, I could make a very compelling argument that getting Jonathan Allen away from the Commanders probably does more to help the Niners win the Super Bowl this year than even re-signing Ayuk, because you got a whole bevy of receivers and your defensive line's kind of just okay. You trade a 7th-round pick for your starting defensive lineman, Malik Collins. So that's a far cry from what they've invested in the defensive line in the past. So if you're expecting a 7th-round pick to just net you a great defensive line, okay, but I think that's kind of a dream world. And if I could get Jonathan Allen and get down the road, I probably would consider doing it. I love Ayuk. I think he's the perfect receiver for the Niners. I think I would pay him. But if they're at this impasse and it's like, we cannot pay you, then trade him for assets that you can use this year. No, other than that, there are no other options.
I agree with your logic. We think an awful lot alike. That's why we do a good show together. But Matt Mayoko just put on the table that being hardball and nasty about this is the way that the 49ers could go.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't begrudge him that. And again, I don't even think it's being nasty. This is just.
Do you think that's him, or do you think that's leaked? That's the other question. Is that Mayoko just giving you a Mayoko wisdom because, he just thought it up? Or do you think somebody whispered in his ear? He does have some take. I'll say this. I don't want to discredit him in any way, but he has had a couple of takes in the last year or so that almost only seem like they could be sourced from a leak.
Well, I think Matt is dialed in. I think Matt feels that it's part of his job to get his rumors right, not just kind of lob things against the wall to see what sticks. His relationship with the team it's a hand-in-hand relationship. They're symbiotic. They feed and work off each other, around each other. So yeah, I don't think Matt is just pulling this out of thin air. I think he might have heard something. I think, a direction might have been tipped to him somehow, some way. And he's also smart enough, and Mayoko is, he knows that's part of the deal. Like, he's been around the block enough times to know that everything that the team is telling me probably comes with a little bit of an agenda to it. So I'm not going to just, turn around and tell you everything that they tell me, but I'll use the good stuff, the stuff that I know my company that I work for, that I'm trying to, create clicks for. This matters. I think Matt Mayoko's a really smart guy. He's really balanced. And if things come from him, they're probably well-sourced, and it's not out of a place of attention-seeking or panic. Matt's not a look-at-me broadcaster. He never has been.
Well, he doesn't. Yeah, I mean,
he's not a look-at-me journalist. He's just there to do the job and try to do it right.
Right. But he's also, working for an entity that is very close to the 49ers. You could almost say flagship kind of brand of the 49ers. He's hosting 49er events for the 49ers.
Right.
So it's not, he's not truly, I don't know if I could, I love him. He's a good guy, but I don't know if is he truly independent?
Is he independent like you and I? Absolutely not.
Is he to what level of independence? So all I'm saying is, I don't think the Niners spin. I don't think the Niners leak, but I would not be surprised if somebody whispered in his ear, "Hey, look, we're not budging on this, and if you want to guess where this is going, here's a good guess. We franchise tag him, and he plays in the 5th-year option, and we try to work out a deal. And if we can't get a deal done during the course of the year, we'll tag him and likely trade him next March." And then he just went with it. It's possible. It's very specific. It's a very specific opinion that he threw out there. It wasn't like, I think he'll be this. It's like, no. I think he'll play on the 5th-year option. He'll get the franchise tag next year, and then they'll wind up trading him next March while he's on the tag. So we'll see. Wow. Some people, I guess I understand them playing that kind of hardball because it is a plentiful resource, wide receiver, and they already have a bunch of receivers, and maybe, Shanahan grades the receivers very harshly. Maybe he's dissatisfied in some way with what he's getting out of his receivers. I don't know. The receivers didn't come up big in the Super Bowl. Does that have anything to do with it? I don't know.
As we turn our attention to guys who absolutely are signed under contract and will be out on the field when veterans report a week after rookies report and training camp is underway for the entire team. Just want to ask you, which veteran do you think should be looking in his rearview mirror the most? Who is most threatened by player X having a good training camp means now I'm on the depth chart rather than at the top of it?
There's a bunch. There's a bunch of guys that really should look over their shoulder.
Give me your number one, though. Who's sitting in pole position of watch your rearview mirror? Because I think it's Spencer Burford.
Spencer Burford doesn't even have a starting job. Spencer Burford today is not a starter. So I don't know
I don't know. I think he is.
No, I don't think he is. I think it's just, to me, if you go to Our Lads and you look at the Niner current depth chart, that's probably the best depth chart in the media right now is the Our Lads. They've got Feliciano as the starter at right guard. They have Spencer as the backup at left guard behind Banks, and they have Pooney as the backup to Feliciano. I would probably say even though Feliciano for Pooney for sure has to be considered. For me, I would say it's Juszczyk and Guerrero. And I know there's a lot of people going, Guerrero doesn't even play fullback, and he may not. But you got to remember this. You only keep a certain number, especially with this wide receiver position. You're going to keep for sure 5, right? For sure. And maybe 6 wide receivers. And if you keep 6 wide receivers, there's a very good chance you can only keep 5 running backs. So you've got Christian and then Juice, your fullback, high-paid fullback. Then you got Mitchell, Guerrero, Patrick Taylor, Jordan Mason, Cody Schrader. And I think Cody Schrader's real. So to me, I think, what if Guerrero comes out, is not really a halfback, but makes a couple of really explosive, plays, either as a, receiver or runner. Juszczyk's 33. He's 33. I'd much rather waive Juszczyk a year too early than lose Guerrero or Cody Schrader to waivers.
I think if there's a numbers game,
those guys.
I think if there's a numbers game in the roster, that's a possibility. But Kyle Juszczyk he's
already redone his deal.
He's so far and away a trusted agent, to borrow from Jim Harbaugh there.
He is.
This is a guy that Kyle Shanahan loves. I think this is a guy who was wearing a tuxedo at Christian McCaffrey's wedding, right? I mean, I think he was part of the wedding party, for goodness sakes.
He's a leader on the team.
I don't think he has much.
He's also
33 to worry about from a numbers game. He's back for one more year. This is his last year, I think, in a 49ers uniform. If I'm Kyle Juszczyk, this is my last year in the NFL. I'm a really smart guy. My wife is now cranking out freaking, NFL gear, officially licensed by the NFL gear. I bet you that Christian Juszczyk is about 2 years away from this licensing deal, from making more money than her husband made in his entire career if it goes really well for her. I mean, she could be sitting on top of a
How many touches? If I said to you, how many touches last year did Juszczyk? How many? He's a guy who touches the ball. He's a fullback.
He touches the fullback more than any other fullback. He probably
how many touches do you think he had I'll tell you how many games he played. He played 17 games. In 17 games, how many touches?
Would you guess? I'm going to say he had 18 touches.
Very close. He had a total of let's see, he had 14 receptions and
about another 10 carries.
5 carries.
Yeah.
He had 19. You were off by 1. 19.
This team
19 touches. That's not a lot of touching the football for a guy who makes the kind of money he makes. He's been overpaid for years. And now they've got a guy in Guerrero who's his same size, basically.
Here's the thing.
But just way faster.
That he is a weapon. I think he's a weapon that should be used more. I think that he could be a solution if you're having problems at TE2. You need a second tight end. He can basically do that as well. He's not being paid to touch the ball. It's really not what he does. That's just the sprinkles on top of what he does. He picks up blitzes and he opens up holes. That's what he does.
I mean, I can't. They didn't use him as a lead blocker nearly as much as most people think.
No, they really don't. They don't run a lot of eye. They don't run a lot of power.
I just think that if I have to lose Schrader or Guerrero or Juszczyk, I'm losing Juszczyk. I'm not losing it. Now we'll see what Schrader and Guerrero look like this summer, but based on if those guys can play, and I think they can, I'd rather go with the youth. So to me, if Guerrero gets, looks explosive and gets some run at fullback, especially last year they brought in Jack Coletto, and he really wasn't an NFL athlete, but he was incredibly smart. This year they bring in Guerrero, who is a crazy NFL athlete. So, and Juszczyk's got, as you said, maybe a year left. So that's the guy that I think ought to be looking over his shoulder. Why? Because I can't imagine. I think Schrader's going to be good, and I can't imagine the Niners cutting their Guerrero, their 4th round running back, who they traded up for. I just can't imagine it. So, and I can't imagine them going with 6 backs or 7 backs. It just doesn't seem like there's enough spots on the roster. So
it sounds a little funny coming out of my mouth before I even say it.
I'll say Juszczyk.
But given the way that the 49ers believe that they can create running backs either, off the street or back of their own roster, maybe the running back cut is Elijah Mitchell, where they just look at him and they go, you know what, we really like you and you do fit and you are productive, but you're not old as an NFL player, but you're older than a rookie. And we think the rookie can do what you do, and you got a history of injury and the rookie doesn't. So maybe you're the tough cut, Elijah Mitchell.
Yeah. Or maybe there's an injury. I mean, Mitchell's a favorite of Shanahan's because he has no negative runs and he never fumbles. But, if you said based on what I've seen, if I was betting on
Elijah
this.
Mitchell too, man, I really like Elijah Mitchell. I would not want to see him go, but just thinking of how the Niners view and value and discover their own running backs, it feels like they've got a couple of discoveries waiting on their own team that they might want to hold on to more than they want to hold on to the unknown of these guys is more valuable to them than the known of Elijah Mitchell. And Elijah Mitchell is someone that, if you told the NFL, hey, come get Elijah Mitchell right now, he's up for trade, I guarantee you're looking at a 6th, 7th rounder for that guy.
I think even more. I mean, Dallas could badly use him. I mean, there's a few teams around. But, here's the one thing. Shanahan is the guy who makes this call. Shanahan has consistently put Mitchell over Mason.
Yep.
So even though we like Mason, even though Mason's intriguing to the fans, I would say if you made me wager on it right now, I'd probably go they keep 5, and the 5 are CMC, Juszczyk, Mitchell, Guerendo, and Schrader, with Patrick Taylor and Jordan Mason getting cut. And I don't or traded. But I wouldn't do that because Jordan Mason to me looks like a monster. But obviously Shanahan doesn't share that belief, or at least sees more great things in Mitchell than Mason.
Well, look, I think he should be your second running back. I really do. But if Cody Schrader and Guerendo are just superstars in training camp and in the preseason, there's a tough decision there. Maybe I'm just throwing it out here, just thinking out loud. That's all we're doing over here. We're just thinking out loud. Welcome to Wake Up, like and subscribe. Thank you very much for supporting the channels. It streams on both channels. Make sure you're liked and subscribed to both, no matter where you're watching. Make sure that when the show is over today, you go over to the other guy's channel and you like and subscribe to that channel as well. Did you see there's a story? ESPN's Jeremy Fowler was talking to a player personnel. His ranking of top running backs in the league is, I guess, where the conversation started. And then the point was brought up to him, and I saw it aggregated. It was in an Arizona newspaper somewhere. ESPN's Jeremy Fowler quoted an unnamed player personnel executive who said, quote, San Francisco made one of the best trades of the decade when they got Christian McCaffrey in 2022. He's perfect for what they do. I mean, the results, I think speak for themselves. The 49ers were a pretty good football team before Christian McCaffrey joined them. Then they became the second best team in the league, only second to the Kansas City Chiefs. With Christian McCaffrey, they have been virtually unbeatable in most games that he's played. He's been phenomenal. His production has already, I think, vaulted him into the top 10 all-time 49er offensive weapon conversations. The guy's been absolutely perfect for what they do, as the guy was quoted saying. But 2 years prior to the McCaffrey trade, the guy went on to say, the 49ers pulled off arguably an even bigger steal in the trade when they traded for Trent Williams for a 5th round pick. Think of that. They flipped a 5th round pick and a 3rd round pick for Trent Williams. That's
great.
That is ridiculous. Looking back on it, you'd think they had to have given up more. They gave up a 5th and a 3rd for Trent Williams. That's it.
Yeah.
I can't even
best left tackle in the game.
Well, and I
it's a
can't
great
even
trade.
imagine the team really making the argument that they can compete for a Super Bowl without Trent Williams.
I mean, it just there were some circumstances with Trent where he was unhappy with Washington, and I think there was some leverage that the Commanders didn't have there. But so that's part of the reason that price tag was lower. I think everybody knew that that was a great deal for the 49ers. But yeah, I mean, it's, the one thing about the NFL is you don't see a lot of trades, but when you do, oftentimes they don't make a whole lot of sense. The Niners, before they went to the Super Bowl in the Harbaugh era, or after they went to the Super Bowl, I should say, added Anquan Boldin. And Anquan Boldin was still damn good.
He was a hell of a Niner.
And he had a 200-yard day in his first game, I think, against Green Bay, week 1, for playing with Kaepernick. But Anquan Boldin, they got for a 6th-round pick. And if you look, I think Marshawn Lynch might have gone from Buffalo to Seattle for nothing. I mean, hardly anything. So it's like there aren't a lot of trades in the NFL, but usually when guys get traded, you're looking at the draft pick compensation is always like, what? It's like teams really love their draft picks, and the draft picks represent tremendous value. And usually if you're trading for the player and you're getting whoever's getting the picks is getting lower value picks than you would think based on how the players played. But that's, players have big names and big reputations. And as they get older, they're just a name on the back of the jersey, and it's not, they don't have the same game. And then all of a sudden people are like, you get traded blankety blank and you only got you trade them for a 6th-round pick. I mean, it's like, you got to be kidding me. But yeah, that's kind of the way it goes. So that's another reason why I would not be in a real rush to get picks back for Ayuk, because odds are you're going to get like something very underwhelming, like a 3rd and a 4th-round pick, and that ain't doing anything for you.
Well, I mean, it depends on who that third. I mean, it's again.
Well, it depends if you draft Russell Wilson in the 3rd round or something.
Right. Picks don't mean much until that's the pick that turns into a player that's sitting in your team's Hall of Fame one day. And then, oh my God, thank God you did it. So
CJ Beathard for the pick that became Brock Purdy, that kind of trade.
It's the greatest CJ Beathard. It's the greatest day CJ Beathard's ever had in the NFL. Let's be honest about it. So I've got a few other NFL stories that officially come from the land of the other stuff. Do you have any more Niners here?
Yeah, well, there's a good story right now, Damon, on Niners Nation by Jason Aponte. Mm-hmm. And he is reviewing 3 potential Brandon Ayuk trade scenarios. And, we've all seen all the different scenarios, but here's the 3 that he threw out. The first one came from, or I guess Cody Benjamin of CBS Sports came up with 3 proposals for Ayuk that include the Washington Commanders. Proposal 1, tell me what you think of this one. Ayuk for, very simply, their 1st-round pick next year.
For who are we trading with here?
It's Ayuk to the Commanders for the
Commanders for the 1st-round pick.
To me, that's a non-starter.
I need a body coming back. I need a warm body coming back to add to this roster.
It has to be at least a Jahan Dotson or,
and I'm not
or
talking
just, it doesn't have to even be a receiver. It has to be, but you can't get it just a pick. You can't just get a pick. Number 2, Ayuk to Washington for a receiver named Diami Brown and a 2nd and a 4th in next year's draft. That's an easy no. I need a body coming back that's better than Diami Brown. There you go. And Brown had 29 receptions in his career. He can run, but I mean, you got Jacob Cowing. So why do you need a guy like that? And then this 3rd one is kind of interesting. This one's interesting. Those 2 were not interesting. This one is interesting. This is a 3-way trade, Damon. Ooh. Denver gets Jamison Crowder and a 3rd-round pick from Washington next year. The Commanders get Ayuk. The Niners get Cortland Sutton from Denver and Washington's 2025 2nd-rounder. You know what? Yes. I would do that deal.
I would do that deal.
You're getting a big-time receiver who's under contract at a more reasonable number. You're getting a 2nd-round pick that easily could be in the top 50, and you're making this nightmare go away. And you're Sutton's 28. He's established. He's coming off kind of a down year with Russell Wilson throwing him the rock. But and on top of that, Sutton wants to get paid too. But
right. Look,
he's not going to reach Ayuk's
production in Denver against them, because Denver's been in a little bit of a weird, just place. What I like about Courtland Sutton is he is a body type that the 49ers really don't have right now, a receiver, not that plays an awful lot out on the field. How big is Juwan Jennings? He's like 6'3",
6'3", 225.
This is a 6'4" player, Courtland Sutton.
This guy's big. He's a big receiver. I'll say this. I like Marvin Mims from Denver. That's the guy. That's the young receiver I'd want to, instead of one of those picks, how about a lower pick and give me Marvin Mims? If I can get Sutton and Mims, something like that, a 2-for-1, I would definitely do it. Just from the standpoint of even though you don't need depth there, I think there's a chance that a guy like Mims could really come on. I thought he had a tremendous year last year, and he barely touched the ball. You put him in a high-powered offense and let him get comfortable, Mims might be damn good.
Courtland Sutton apparently is not happy with his current contract. Sorry, I'm reading this from Mile High Huddle right now. With Jerry Jeudy's trade to the Browns, Courtland Sutton's role as wide receiver one of this offense only becomes more important. Unfortunately, the wide receiver is currently engaging in contract talks with the Broncos that has indicated that if a resolution is not reached by the start of camp, he hasn't ruled out holding out. I mean, to trade for Courtland Sutton, are you winding up in the same complicated situation you're in with Brandon Ayuk, except you just changed the name from Brandon Ayuk to Courtland Sutton?
But the thing is, maybe Sutton is going to earn
a year wide receiver.
Well, he's not a $30 million wide receiver, but maybe Sutton what he's asking for is more in line with what you can afford to pay. I don't know. I mean, it's just, to me, that one's the most intriguing though. Courtland Sutton in a second seems fair. Heck, if I could get Marvin Mims and Courtland Sutton, I would try that. But I love Ayuk. I think he's perfect for the Niners.
How about this?
But at some point, I'd like to move off this.
Is there a way we can involve all of these teams and all of these picks, change Courtland Sutton's name
to what?
To Patrick Surtain, and then go ahead and take that second rounder from Washington and flip it back to Denver, and now we got a deal?
Say that again. So the three-way deal would be Washington getting Ayuk, Denver's getting a second-round pick, a third-round pick, and Jamison Crowder, and the Niners are getting Surtain and that's it.
Yeah,
I do that too. To me, if you said to me, you can. I mean, I love Ayuk, but if I got $1 million ticket on the Niners to win the Super Bowl this year in New Orleans, and I can have Ayuk or Surtain, I'm taking Surtain.
Look, I'm leaning into the cliche, which isn't Brandon Ayuk wins championships. It's defense wins championships. So I'll take the lockdown corner for sure.
Well, I mean, and also it's also about what else you got. If you don't have Surtain, you might have Ambry Thomas playing. You might have Womack playing. You might have a young player playing.
It makes that secondary lineup incredibly well. If you were able to add a straight up number guy one ain't fucking around corner to the 49ers right now, all your secondary problems basically have vanished. You're not worried about that deep cover safety anymore. You're not worried about nickel. Everybody falls into line in a way.
Well, you know why it makes sense too? Where the reason it makes sense, I think, is because the Niners like to have the upper hand, which is why they drafted Pearsall and Cowing, right? Now they've got the upper hand. Well, do they have the upper hand at corner? Well, they just drafted Renardo Green and they drafted Luter. But if you had a guy like Surtain, now you can play super hardball with Lenore and with Mooney Ward if you want. Not that playing hardball with your players is something you dream of, but at least you have leverage.
It's insurance. It's insurance.
Yeah. At a key spot. And let's be honest, you just lost the Super Bowl because of the awesome play of McDuffie
sitting on your wide receivers.
Yeah, McDuffie and Snead were better than your wide receivers on Super Bowl Sunday. And if you had Surtain and Mooney and Lenore, maybe next year your corners will dominate the AFC champions wide receivers in the Super Bowl.
Now you got me wanting to look up, like, what's Cortland Sutton's win rate against, pressure? What's Cortland Sutton's win rate against man up, man to man? Because that's where Brandon Ayuk and Debo both disappeared. They got eaten up in that Super Bowl. They did.
I don't think he runs as well as Ayuk. I just watched him last night for 20 minutes or so. He's a big-bodied receiver who's got a huge catch radius. He can catch high, he can catch it off the turf, but he doesn't have quite the explosiveness of Ayuk.
He's like a water bug, man. He cuts on a dime. He's so fast.
Well, he's a combination of strong and fast,
right?
But I'll say this: if I could get Surtain and Marvin Mims, I would do it like that, man. I wouldn't even think about it. Because I like that speed. I like that speed receiver.
As we've dumped on Brandon Ayuk and talked about how replaceable he might be and all that stuff. You get out to training camp, and if he were out there, oh my God, he just jumps off the field. I mean, Brandon Ayuk, the way that he moves, the speed at which he moves,
to me, the catch radius too. I mean, he's another guy. He will go up in the middle of the field in a crowd, what seems like 10 feet in the air. I mean, it's like he literally will attack every ball like it's personally his. So yeah, I mean, he had a tremendous camp last year where he was noticeably one of the great players on the field.
He was just lean, not an ounce of body fat on the guy, just fast, cuts, nasty. Like he runs angry.
It's funny, a couple people weighing in. Freddie Trey Maxes would love the Surtain trade scenario. Steve Cass says Surtain is not being traded, period. Oh, maybe. Wait a second. We've got George Payton here, the GM of the Broncos, is in the chat.
Oh, fantastic.
He says Surtain's not being traded, period. Steve Cass. I mean, the GM of the Broncos. And then we get this one. Miami cooked Surtain for 70+ points. Oh, yeah. No, so he can't play. He sucks. And then we got this one. It says, put this in perspective. Ayuk scored 7 touchdowns last season. It ain't like he set touchdown records. He's good. He's a good receiver.
Look at it this way. If 1,000-yard receivers just fell off the tree for the 49ers under Kyle Shanahan's regime, there would have been another one other than Brandon Ayuk, right? I mean, Brandon Ayuk's production can't just be measured in touchdowns. Every single time he caught a ball last year, it was a first down. I'm exaggerating, obviously, but every other time he certainly caught a ball last year was for a first down. He was a chain moving.
He's a great receiver.
First degree. He really was.
He's a great receiver. I mean, beyond that, let's just talk about the total football player. I mean, you're a team that loves to run the ball. This guy blocks with a vengeance down the field. Most receivers, I would say, as a rule, receivers don't block with a vengeance down the field. So you have, in some ways, the perfect guy for your system. And now it's just like, well, you know what?
Most downfield receiver blocking is involved to the point where it just gets the receiver not yelled at during film review.
You're just getting out there. You're out there for a jog. You're not out there to really beat up anybody, but he's actually looking to put people on the ground.
Brandon Ayuk really thinks that my block is the block that's going to spring this for a touchdown, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to make it like I'm fucking, a great offensive lineman, like I'm Anthony Munoz out here pulling. So, I do. I really like Ayuk. He fits the team so great. I wish that everyone in cooler heads could just prevail and leaving a little bit of today money on a table for an opportunity to win a Super Bowl today. You'd think that would be a main motivation. But again, if it's all about just getting the most amount of money possible, who can begrudge anybody thinking like that in 2024? It's protect yourself and don't worry about the rest of them.
I mean,
pretty much a mentality in the world right now.
What kills me is this kind of reaction. Leo, Ayuk's a whiny little bitch. I mean, it's like, why? here's what I would say.
Well, he has been.
Never
He's been very
personalize.
He's been very frustrating.
Never personalize a business dispute between two parties that neither are you. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean, never personalize a business dispute between two other people. It makes no sense.
Right.
You just got to remember this. Yeah, we'd like this done in a timely fashion, but he's not missing anything. There's no urgency here. Now, the urgency is going to dial up in a few weeks if he's not there then, but that's a few weeks. So let's wait until then. Right. I do understand the people who were just like, he's whiny, he's this. This is the modern NFL where sometimes you have no leverage and all you can do is talk.
Right.
Social media noise. That's where he's at.
Social media noise is all he's got to bring to the table in his documentary.
He's got nothing to, but here we go. B. Lauren. He's got your Cameron Sutton info. He says, or she says, Cortland Sutton is 26% win rate versus man coverage, 49% win rate versus zone, 79% true catch rate, 50% contested catches. I think if we think that's because of Russell Wilson, then fine. But stats wise, he's a drop off from Ayuk. Oh, he's not Ayuk. No, Ayuk is better. Let's say it loudly so everybody in the back can hear it. Ayuk is better than Cortland Sutton, which is why that if you traded for Cortland Sutton, it would be Ayuk for Cortland Sutton right? It wouldn't be Ayuk and for Sutton. It would be Ayuk for Sutton and.
Right.
So,
So I got a few other things. I can't talk about Brandon Ayuk or a conceivable trade that you read about somewhere. I don't want to talk about it anymore. Do you have anything other than Brandon Ayuk left on the table today about the Niners? If not, I got a couple of other NFL stories for you.
Well, yeah. I mean, I did read a lot of the annuals in the last week, and one of the lines that kept coming up, and it was stated by John Lynch at the end of the Super Bowl loss, is that in his mind, the 49ers needed to go out in this offseason and add some, quote, finishers. And I guess the question I would have is, now that the offseason has come and gone and we're on the verge of camp, did John Lynch indeed add what you would just define as finishers to get the 49ers over the top this year? I like Leonard Floyd as a finisher.
I was about to say, so Leonard Floyd is the first name that popped into my mind right there. He is, a tested veteran in this league. He's passed an awful lot of tests. What's the definition of him finishing? Have the Niners won the Super Bowl? Is that finishing the job? What if he had a 10-sack season, but the Niners didn't win the Super Bowl? Did he finish his job? But I don't know what the question really asks. Here's the thing I know. No one's going to be accused of having a good year no matter what they do without a Lombardi trophy at the end of it. There is nothing left to accomplish. There's no amount of statistical excellence. There is no amount of production from a fantasy standpoint or a pro football focus standpoint. There isn't any amount of pro football focus positive grades that matter at all. It's just about ending the year holding the Lombardi trophy. Anything less than Kyle doing this at the end of the Super Bowl means the whole year kind of was a waste of time. And that sucks.
I'll say this, then get ready for unhappiness, because the reality is the spot the Niners are in, teams have been in 56 times and not made it to the Super Bowl.
That's
56 times.
It's not easy.
In the history of the Super Bowl, the team that lost did not go back the next year and win. Only 3 times has it happened where the team that lost the Super Bowl came back and won it the next year. And 2 of those were like Super Bowls in like the first 10, like Super Bowl 5 and Super Bowl 7 or something like that, whatever it was.
Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah.
Kansas City Chiefs lose to the Patriots, and then they come back and they beat the Niners.
They didn't lose to the Patriots.
Or, excuse me, the Buccaneers.
Buccaneers, yeah.
Fucking Brady.
Well, that O-line. I mean, their O-line was hurt that year. And, their O-line was bad this year, but for whatever reason, they got no holding calls in the Super Bowl. It was an amazing performance from a bad Chiefs O-line. Or it was a dubious officiated game.
Yeah. Don't go back and look at it. You will be upset. You will be upset. Look, yeah, the 49ers are in a situation that is it's one that is an envious situation to be in. It's also, setting up for pain more than anything else. Winning a Super Bowl is it's as hard of a thing to do in sports as there is. And the 49ers got nothing left to do but that. Kyle has nothing left to do. There's no amount of he could have an undefeated regular season and then go on to lose in the playoffs, and he is going to be talked about like he was Rich Kotite. That's the truth.
It's bottom line. It's a bottom line oriented, you either do or you don't. There's no ambiguity about any of this. You either do or you don't. And it's as simple as that. I mean, we can talk about it endlessly, but you either got it done or you didn't get it done. So thus far, he hasn't gotten it done.
It doesn't sound like, the house anyone that wants to live in, because you only want to live in the house that's got the Lombardi trophy sitting on the front lawn. But the truth is, without a Lombardi trophy, knowing how mathematically the odds skew against any team winning a Lombardi trophy in any season, all you can really, really hope for is that you have a good team with an owner who cares and a well-run organization and a general manager who knows what he's doing and a coach who continues to motivate him and draw up winning game plans. Even in defeat, you can have the right game plan and still lose a game. But if it's a winning game, the 49ers are an excellent operation. The only thing they're guilty of is not winning a Super Bowl. That's it. That's it. And I know that there's a lot of attention.
Not winning the 6th Super Bowl, and they've won 5.
There's a lot of attention grabbing to be done by content creators, selling you on the what is not there, on the how poorly it's coached, how poorly it's run, how out of time all these people should be because they've been stewing around Santa Clara too long by now. And if they haven't done it by now, they never will. And that is such poor coverage of the reality of this league. For the last 5, 6, 7 years, the 49ers are in the small handful of teams in the NFL that are truly, really well-run teams. Everybody in the league wants to be more like this than less like this. And the Niners are one of those teams that everyone wants to be more like. Everyone wants to run Kyle's running game. Everyone wants to have, this many Pro Bowlers. Everyone wants to have the amount of fan support that the 49ers enjoy. Everybody wants to enjoy the profits that the 49ers enjoy. They are a crown jewel of the NFL without the Lombardi trophy. With it, you're homecoming queen. That's it. 49ers have had a really good time at the homecoming dance, but they just can't get laid at the end of the night. That's all. There's just nothing left to do here. They just got to get laid at the end of the night. That's it. And there you go. I've actually
you either do or you don't.
You either do or you don't, Larry. Junior prom, no dice. Senior prom, dice. Let's see. I got this for you. There's something going on in Mark Davis's finances that what is going on here? Do you see any other ownership group in football selling off small slices of ownership? The Raiders have done it again. Pro Football Talk reported on Tuesday that Hall of Fame defensive lineman Richard Seymour, who ended his NFL career with the Raiders, has partnered with Super Bowl winning teammate Tom Brady to become part owners of the Raiders. Brady and Seymour will own 10.4% of the Raiders under majority owner Mark Davis, who was the force of getting Seymour into the ownership group. I want to know what the money is, and I want to know why Mark Davis continues to sell off percentages of ownership. Why?
Because he's poor. He doesn't have any money. He's not a rich guy. He's a relatively poor guy, which is why he bailed out of Oakland, because he got a sweet financial situation in Vegas. And yet, he has no assets other than this football team. It's an
He's
it's
got
an
the Las
incredibly
Vegas Aces.
yeah, but I mean, it's an incredibly lucrative asset that he owns, and he's just living off of it. He's just living off of it. So, it's no different than the kid in college who rents out a room in his house to some guy in his fraternity. Hey, you know what? I was paying $700 a month, but now I'm renting the living room to Bob, and I'm paying $450 a month. So and that's really it. That's all. I mean, he's literally no different than the college kid who's letting a couple of his buddies, hang out at the flop house.
First of all, how does Richard Seymour have I'm NFL owner money?
Well, he's a Hall of Famer. He played a long time, and the Raiders gave him a lot of that money. They're the ones who paid him in free agency.
Still, I mean, Brady's, we're talking Richard Seymour can't be worth
here's the thing. Well, first of all,
millions of dollars.
First of all, if somebody offers you an opportunity to take some income that you aren't living on, and the kinds of money, the typical money that's invested in these assets is not, that's not like, hey, I need to pay, my tuition money. This is money that you have. It's not only the safest investment, it's one of the greatest investments, and almost everybody would run to it. Look at the NFL pie. The NFL pie has gone from like 7 billion to like 20 billion in less than a decade. Owning these franchises is an incredible thing. And if you own 10% and it's deemed worth $100 million, and then suddenly, it's 10 years from now, and now it's worth, $700 million. Well, I mean, technically, if you wanted to, you could borrow against that asset going forward and have lots and lots and lots of money. So there's very few business propositions that are more lucrative than owning any percentage of an NFL team.
Oh, I understand why guys would want as many slices as they can get. What I don't understand is why the owner of the pizzeria keeps on selling those slices. It's again, Mark Davis.
He has no money.
Sell the fucking team. You know what I mean? Like, he can't, though, because his ego and his celebrity is directly attached to walking around on that field in his white jogging suit. And that's all the guy's got. That's it.
I mean, he's just another old guy with a bad haircut if he doesn't own the Raiders. But as he's a nobody loser with money in the bank, except he owns the Raiders. And then now everywhere he goes, it's like, there's the owner of the Raiders. There's the owner of the Raiders. I'm sure he's, I'm sure if your buddy's loving Vegas with what he's got, I'm sure this guy's loving Vegas times 100.
So are you saying that 24-year-old smoking hot yoga instructor that's carrying a baby wouldn't be with him if he were a garbage man? I don't believe you, Larry. I think that's true love.
I'm just saying that, Mark Davis is a nobody without this team. That's why rich guys want to own teams, because they're just another rich guy that nobody recognizes or cares about until they own the team. And then all of a sudden, here comes the owner. Here's the owner. Yeah. And all of a sudden there's another, it's like buying in your identity and your job all at once. It's my job and my identity all tied to this one asset.
Right. And here's the thing. You can be so mega rich. You can buy all the yachts you want. Well, I don't give a shit about your yacht, but I might care deeply about this team that you now own. So now we got a connection, right? So it's good to have a dad who left you an NFL team. Try to be one of those.
Yeah, who also didn't have a lot of money and just sued people throughout his life to gain money. I mean, Al Davis just went from lawsuit to lawsuit to lawsuit to lawsuit. He wasn't a rich guy. He was a relatively humble man, as not a man of ownership means, but his family is now. Because of the Raiders.
Speaking of the Raiders, Davante Adams not happy, Larry, with the Los Angeles Chargers social media team, who I guess during their schedule rollout, every team's trying to make a clever or funny or interesting video when they roll out their schedule. Well, I guess when the Raiders came up on the schedule, they showed a picture of Davante Adams and they showed a picture of a trash can. And Davante Adams has, officially written that down in his little black book, and he's keeping score. And he does not like that. This is what he said on the Up and Adams podcast, that he's not very happy with the Chargers' social media team. So if the Raiders beat the Chargers twice this year, Larry, you fire in the social media team? Davante goes, bonkers against you, 20 catches over 2 games, 6 touchdowns, one-man armies you.
You never want to incite your opponent, that's for sure.
Last thing that I've got for you.
Yes.
Former Falcons pass rusher, John Abraham, while talking about his career on a podcast, made an allegation against the 2012 Buccaneers. Abraham claimed that in the final game of the regular season, Bucs tackle Donald Penn gave him a warning. He said, quote, "Hey, man, be careful out there. The coaches told us to hurt you all." That's what Abraham said during the JoeBucksFan.com podcast. I was like, stop playing. He's like, nah, they told us to hurt y'all. So we're going to be going extra after the whistle. And we're going to be doing everything to try to mess with all of you.
What team was he on when what team's he claiming
Donald
was trying
Penn
to hurt?
Is a Buccaneer telling Jonathan Abram, the Falcon, we've been told to come get your ass today. And play.
Who's the head coach at the time? Gruden?
Nope.
Who was it? Dungy?
The thing that makes me think that there is maybe a little truth to this, because no. We'll get to it. And it'll make sense. You're about to see the Matrix. It's Greg Schiano.
The Rutgers guy, who's always had kind of questionable.
Well,
he's had a number of questionable situations.
Schiano basically turned himself into an ex-NFL head coach in real time, and he was out of the league quickly when he had his team firing at victory formation. Remember that? Like, I don't know who they were playing, but Tampa Bay is firing out, like chopping knees during victory formation.
That's a little hardcore.
That's more than hardcore. That's officially not what pros do. It's like being at the last 10 seconds of an NBA game. You're not allowed to shoot if you're up by 10. You know what I mean? Like you don't get to shoot that basketball. These are unwritten rules. Victory formation is tantamount to this game's over, and we all know it. So for Schiano to coach his team to go out there and fire and try to cause a fumble in victory formation so you can, have the Herm Edwards famous play Eagles New York Jets from a million years ago that happened once in NFL history. It's kind of interesting. Now, I would also say if I were Penn, that's exactly what I would tell the guy just to get into his head lining up against me. But we've seen it. The 49ers have been on the receiving end of, affect the head level of go out and play to try to injure your opponent. So it is real. It does exist. I don't know if it really exists in this situation. 2 guys remember it differently. But again, Greg Schiano being involved, I'll give it a strong maybe.
Yeah. I mean, and just his name alone makes you kind of wonder. Because he's been attached to a number of dubious ethical things through the years.
So here's the deal. I see we got a couple of starred chats. Larry, let's hit them. And then I got to run. I got to get going. Not only do I have Cyrus coming up at 11 o'clock today, we're going to be talking about Lauri Markkanen and Warriors and little basketball, little Olympic basketball. I've got a couple of other things to do before that happens. So I got to kind of get rolling here, man.
Okay, here we go. Monty says it's not a super. He says it'll only work if Damon smokes 49 joints before the season starts.
Done.
And
I can do that. I can do that for you, Monty. I won't even do it for myself. I'll do it for you.
Anthony says recently moved to new house and my community is number 40. My community mailbox number. What is that?
So he just moved into a place and his address is 49 something. So yeah, that's a sign. That's
Anthony,
a sign.
it's a sign. It's a sign. There you go. What can I say? One interesting note, we are now in this Giants window of, are the Giants going to make a deal at the trade deadline? There's an interesting article out right now coming out of Pittsburgh.
Just cut Nick Ahmed, by the way.
Yeah, they DFA'd Nick Ahmed, and they're going young, and kind of an interesting time for the Giants. It's like there's a third wild card. They're not that far out of the wild card, yet they are sub 500. And I would say go for, see if you can find guys who have, team control. Like, don't trade prospects for guys who are free agents, not with a team that's not even in the playoffs or may not even make the playoffs. But if you could get like Randy Arozarena or Andrew Vaughn, somebody like that, Jazz Chisholm, all those guys have at least 2 years of club control beyond 2024. That's the kind of addition, if I'm Farhan, I would try to make. The other one that I'm reading about today is there's people around the industry that say the Pirates could be willing to offload the remaining portion of Cabrian Hayes, Charlie Hayes' kids, 8 years, $70 million contract that he signed in 2022. Hayes is having a bad year, and he's had some back issues. He's only hitting .232 with 11 extra base hits, including 3 home runs.
I don't like back issues. Don't like back issues.
Don't like back issues either. But I mean, this guy in 124 games a year ago hit .271, had 31 doubles, 7 triples, 15 homers, 61 RBIs. He's a world-class defensive third baseman. He won his first Gold Glove last season. He led all third basemen with 21 defensive runs saved. This is my pivot if I were the Giants on this one. First of all, Charlie Hayes was a Giant. He was a Giant and was I think he had 2 stints with the Giants actually. But and I'd love to have his kid at third. What do you think of trading Chapman to like one of these teams like the Yankees, who seems like they're dying for a third baseman, getting out from underneath that contract and then turn around and see if you can add a guy like Cabrian Hayes? I mean, if he's got back problems, 8 years, $70 million contract is not that big of a deal. What do you think? Trade Chapman, see if you can add Cabrian Hayes, maybe add a player or two who's got club control, and go with the youth and tee up in 2025 and see what you got.
I would do it. I would do that because I am ready to admit right now that even with a wild card appearance, you're still not doing much in a postseason, should you even reach it. Right. You're forever 3 games under 500. Matt Chapman is one of the most easy on the eyes San Francisco Giants there is. I like watching him play. He had a great at bat, didn't get anything done with it, but he had a really good at bat in a high leverage situation. Last night was a really good game, and the Giants won it with a bleeding seeing eye single and then a walk-off wild pitch.
Giants are hanging. Giants are hanging around.
They're in the conversation, but they're also really not.
No, they haven't been 500 since May the 28th, and they've only spent 2 days all year over 500. So it's
Larry, I would sacrifice a little today to have a better tomorrow. And it feels like the Giants never make that choice. They never really go in that direction. I would like to see it. It would be one of the more definitive moves of Farhan's tenure, where he basically, he doesn't punt on a year as much as he starts focusing on the years coming up a little bit more. I don't know.
I like the idea. First of all, Farhan's got to do something because if they don't make the playoffs, it'll be 7 years. He made one playoff appearance in 7 years. There could be a lot of people calling for his head at the end of the year if they don't make the playoffs. But even beyond that, I think he's got to make that one deal that, that adds hope. He's got to somehow, shop for, he's got to keep building. It's not just like, are you in it or are you out of it? You just got to keep building. So in other words, don't trade for Chris Bryant and let him walk at the end of the year in free agency. Don't trade for a guy who's in the final year of his deal. Trade something for somebody that you have cost certainty on and control over for the next 2 or 3 years, and then build around that and see what you can come up with. That's the approach I would take.
Meanwhile, Larry, Blake Snell's win day. Blake Snell win day. Now
it only took till July the 9th, but he finally got it done.
Well, I mean, he no decision. His ERA is now under 8. It's 7.85, but he walked 3, struck out 3, but only 1 hit over 5 innings. It's the first time he actually wore a Giants uniform and didn't step on his own dick. So congratulations to Blake Snell.
No question. Hey, by the way, everybody hit like and subscribe before you get out of here. If you haven't hit like and subscribe, if you hit like, it will just help more people find the show inside the YouTube algorithm. If you hit subscribe and you hit that notification bell, anytime Damon goes live or I go live, you'll get a notification. And that's pretty much going to do it for us.
I told you, Larry, you're going to want to believe in Blake Snell. Blake Snell's the kind of guy that, he sometimes has a bad year, sometimes has a good year, but when he has a good year, he wins Cy Youngs. So, it's probably out of the equation for this year, but a couple of good innings of Blake Snell, you never know.
I liked Brian Hayes, but knowing he's got back issues, now I love LeBron Hayes. He's got flaws. Hey, you know what? Who doesn't?